John, it's time for our first big one. NES did pretty well. The Game Boy did pretty well. The Genesis did pretty well. But this is the Super Nintendo. And we know how people feel about this system. They hate it.
Well, it's funny you say that. Like retroactively, like NES used to be seen as like just classic untouchable for a long time. But in the modern day, I think people have come around. There's a few people who say like there are no good NES games, and obviously there are good NES games, but
Yeah.
that console reputation has changed a lot, and I don't think that's ever going to happen with this one though. Everything, well, not everything, but a huge chunk of Super Nintendo games are still so modern. If you look at the indie sphere with like a lot of pixel art games, they are just as good as Super Nintendo games were, both visually and mechanically. And I don't think that kind of era is ever really going to show its age.
No, I think it's just far enough where it has that the pixel art is advanced enough that you can
Mm.
really get a sense of the character, like the character emotions and whatnot. You look at stuff like Final Fantasy V,
Yeah.
where they were like emoting more through the sprites, or you can make them bigger and get more of that sense of the character rather than just it's a little tiny Double Dragon guy. Compare Double Dragon NES to Final Fight, and
Mm.
yeah, there's a bit of an upgrade there.
Yeah.
Um,
We're getting a lot more adventures on the Super Nintendo. Like NES was still
mm.
almost in that arcadey sphere that there were more, larger games, but Super Nintendo really knocked it out with tons of massive RPGs. Even the platformers felt more adventure-y. It felt big.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the embodiment of, did this have a lot of gimmicks of the NES? Not really.
Mm.
It's just a better NES. And
Yeah.
people, that's obviously a conversation going on now that the Switch 2 has been revealed as of the time of this thing. We don't have much more information than that. But yeah, it's Nintendo just upgrading is not a bad thing
No.
as we see. Like, iterative works, and we get some classics in that case.
Yeah,
So
it's wild. Almost everything they touched on Super Nintendo just turned out to be a classic. Like A Link to the Past, F-Zero, Mario World, Earthbound. It was endless. There were just so many great games.
and
And
there's still gaps. There's so many games to play.
mm, and coming from the NES, like going from Metroid to Super Metroid or Zelda 1 to A Link to the Past, that you can't overstate how drastic of a jump that was.
No, not at all. And it's certainly reflected in the votes. Like,
Mm,
actually, for a while, it felt like the Super Nintendo would have less variety than the Genesis,
mm.
but eventually they did pull it out. And granted, this is Genesis CD, Sega CD, and 32X getting 202 games. But the Super Nintendo just had the Super Nintendo. Obviously, you have the Japanese version, the Europe, the regions don't matter. You can vote for whatever any game for any region. It's just on that system. But it got 207 different games represented in
Ooh,
this list, uh, totaling the biggest yet, nearly or around 500 votes. This
jeez.
was a nightmare to count, to the point that I've changed the system to try to help myself a bit more and just sort of refining things. So no longer am I asking you to just post it. I am going to have a Google form that you'll see in our posts or on my Bluesky to just link to, and then put your top 10. And that, fortunately, it puts it into a spreadsheet, which makes it a lot easier to count than just individually. Like, oh, you got 10 for this one, 9 for this one, this one. It's a little bit more organized.
Mm.
You refine your system. A lot of people was like, why didn't you do that to begin with? I didn't think of it. I didn't know that forms was a thing. And then Amy's like, you should try this. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you, Amy,
Because
for
it will get as
that.
hellish as this for future systems. Like Super Nintendo's the
Oh
first
yeah.
massive one, but we're gonna it's gonna go
Oh, we get
places.
to PlayStation 1,
Yeah,
PlayStation
yeah,
2,
dangerous.
GameCube. Oh my God.
Mm.
There people care about really care about some of these systems. So shall we get to it, John?
Let's get to it. I was saying just before we started recording, if you made like a top 50 of Super Nintendo games, any of them could be in the top 10. And so I'm fearful of whether I'm gonna guess any of these, but let's give it a shot.
Yeah. I should also note, Ash was supposed to be here, but we had to delay things because of my son being home from school. I couldn't record at the typical time because Ash was really excited about this list. And unfortunately, today he's off going to Magfest, so he can't actually join us. However, he did give me his list of what he predicts will be the top 10 in the order. So I'll give Ash's selection as well as yours, John.
Okay.
So Number 10. What is the 10th most popular, favorite, best Super Nintendo game?
This could be way higher in the list, but I'm gonna say Mega Man X.
That's funny because Ash also predicted Mega Man X at number
Oh,
10.
are we
So you
both
guys are twins
horribly
there.
wrong?
You are both wrong.
Okay,
At number 10, Kirby Superstar.
interesting.
And to have a comparison point for points wise, 890 points for this one game. That's
Jeez.
as much as others. But yeah, Kirby Superstar at number 10, and hard to fault that one. Kirby's made a lot of representations. Obviously, with our audience, we have a lot of Nintendo fans,
Mm.
so it makes sense. Kirby's going to be up there higher than most, but Kirby Superstar is a great game. Wasn't it called Fun Pack in
It
Europe?
was called Fun Pack. If this
I'm
was
sorry,
just my
Superstar's a better name.
yeah, you won there. If this were my just personal list, I don't know if this would crack the top 10. I think that there's a lot of really great Super Nintendo games, and I'm not quite sure Superstar is quite there, but it is great. And we also got the DS version, which expands upon it even more.
Mhm. I think it helps that you have. I almost wonder if this is where I think Kirby sort of branched out and became
Mm,
much more well known. And at least I suspect because I was a latecomer to Kirby. Well, I got in with Dreamland 2, but I didn't stick with it because I didn't have a Super Nintendo growing up.
mm,
So I retroactively played a lot of these games. But Superstar is, I think, interesting because it's like so many mini bites and
yeah.
really sort of gets to the identity of Kirby and also introduced the various costumes, which gives Kirby so much more personality.
You can
Like
also
the idea to have
kiss
him
your
change.
partner in this game, so
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
something.
that's essential.
Yeah.
It had multiplayer. It had tons of different scenarios to go through. It had an extremely memorable villain in Marks.
Mm,
It changed up the gameplay in subtle ways with each one. You could also be, a little. You could like one more than others, but the variety was there, and I I understand why it wouldn't be in most people's top 10 lists, but I think it does enough that it kind of deserves it. And
well,
as many people have mentioned, move sets for the
yeah. Well,
abilities.
I guess it kind of is in most people's top 10 if it made it here.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
that's
it's just yeah. I think it's a great game. Just personally, I wouldn't quite put it here, but obviously, I am wrong.
yes, if your opinion is different from this, you are wrong.
Mm,
That's all it comes down to. But yeah, I mean, again, with all these games, if you haven't played it yet, check it out.
yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. But let's get to number 9. What was number 9, John?
Super Castlevania 4.
It is not Super Castlevania 4.
Mm,
Uh, it is, and Ash predicted Kirby Superstar, so he's wrong.
wow.
He actually thought Super Kirby Superstar would take over X, but no, it's the opposite. Mega Man X at number 9 with
Mm,
925 points, beating out Kirby by only 35 points. And what do you say about this game? Like Mega Man X is a classic.
yeah. Yeah, this is absolutely top 10 material. There's no doubt about that at all. It made Mega Man so cool, like with the wall jump and the little dash. Just redesigned everything. Like Mega Man was getting pretty stale on the NES. They did like what 6 games in like
Mhm.
5 years or something like that.
It's something like that. It was a
Yeah,
it's a massive turnaround. It's nuts
yeah.
how
It
they did
needed a
that.
reinvention, and they nailed it. It was just one of the coolest games on the console. You can probably debate like which Mega Man X is the best one because Super Nintendo has a few of them, but the first one's absolutely the most iconic.
Oh yeah, I think for people who grew up with X, that they know all the Mavericks, they know Sigma, they have that game just down pat. And I
Yeah,
think the thing that I think that you have the a sort of harder edge to it. You have a bit more, you have way more story this time around, which definitely gets you more connected with the characters, but also just the exploration, going around each
yeah,
level, using the powers in different ways in order to find upgrades that allow you to go even further. It has that sort of RPG-ish, Metroidvania-ish quality to it, where you are making Mega Man more powerful as you go through, and you can feel that difference. But then you can also have the challenge of not getting those upgrades and trying to
Yeah.
do all this. And it allows for a lot of replayability for people who want to just give it a shot. And yeah,
And you can get the
it's,
Hadouken, so what more needs
yeah.
to be said?
So many secrets, so many fun things. This is my it's having been playing through all the Mega Man games, X is definitely still up there and just in terms
Mm,
of everything I've played so far. But I think I prefer X4 over X, but that's another discussion completely.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, Mega Man X, great. Like probably the game of the Mega Man series for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd agree.
All right, let's get to number 8.
Okay. Donkey Kong Country 2.
It is not Donkey Kong Country 2.
Mhm.
Ash predicted Earthbound. It
Hmm.
is not Earthbound. At number 8, Super Mario World 2,
I was
Yoshi's
gonna
Island.
say this! I doubted myself and said Donkey Kong. I thought this might be a Yoshi's Island. It's probably still the best Yoshi game to this day. It is just so chill in a way. It's chill yet frightening, and that's the right balance of chill. Because when you get too chill, you stop trying. But if there's a little bit
Mhm.
of fear in there, then it keeps you on your toes. Yoshi's Island is just that perfect mismatch of feelings, and it looks beautiful too. It's easily one of the best looking games on the entire system.
It's gorgeous, it's creative. People will complain about Baby Mario. Yeah, obviously his crying's annoying, but that's sort of the point. You have a baby that's in trouble, you gotta
Yeah.
save him. What's your reward for saving that baby? It's quiet. That boy, that feels real.
Sure. There's a few things from this era that feel like they were kind of exaggerated, and Baby Mario is for sure one of them. Like that cry is not that bad. Just don't
No.
get hit. That's what you gotta
Yeah.
do. Just get good.
That's yeah. I mean, yeah, Yoshi's Island is probably still one of the best, if not the best in the series. I have a very soft spot for Yoshi's Woolly World because I
Hmm.
think it balances the exploration aspect of it better because Yoshi's Island has this weird thing where it's either super easy if you just bum rush it and not worry about collecting everything,
Mm,
but it gets super hard if you try to collect everything
yeah.
and get those extra levels unlocked. So, ooh.
And something every Yoshi game has struggled with. I think Woolly World gets the furthest from this, but they all just do Yoshi's Island again. It's just like they do the same bosses, they do the same like look and feel of everything. I think Woolly World's the
Mhm.
only real sequel. I guess Crafted World maybe as well, but in terms of
Yeah.
like justifiable sequel, Woolly World is about as far as it gets. But this one still holds up so well.
Oh, and some of the best sprites you could ever expect to see. You get those interesting effects like uh touch
Although
fuzzy, get dizzy,
yeah, all the
and
sprite scaling and yeah, they really use the Super FX chip. And the GBA version, like it's fine, but it's missing something. There's certain levels
I
which just don't feel quite right.
I didn't realize that because the first time I played Yoshi's Island was through the Game Boy Advance
Mm,
version, and yeah, obviously really liked it. I kept seeing the box art, but none of my friends had it, and I didn't have a Super Nintendo. But when it finally came to other systems and I picked it up there, I was like, oh, there is a major difference here. The aspects you lost, it's still mostly there. That I
yeah.
still absolutely enjoyed Yoshi's Island, but you get that little bit of extra quality by playing it on Super Nintendo.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, this is the start of the Yoshi. I feel like Yoshi had other games before Yoshi's Island came out, but this kind of established Yoshi's world.
He had a
And
puzzle
brought out the
game.
Shy Guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is where the Shy Guys kind of mainly came back in. They're his Goombas.
True. Yeah, they were just Doki Doki Panic guys, but then they were established as like iconic Mario enemies.
Yeah. So, uh, I see some people say they're surprised it's this low, but honestly, when you look at the competition,
Yeah. I think this is a good place for it, to be honest.
yeah, and it was never going to get overtaken by Mega Man X by the time it ended because it got 1,068 points.
Mm.
Mega Man X only had 925, so Mega Man X had a lot of catching up to do, and Yoshi's Island was just showing up far more than it. but it also wasn't exactly close to the next game.
Hmm.
So let's get to that next game. John, what is number 7?
We're only at number 7. I feel like we're running out of spaces because there's still a lot of games that could take these places. I've already said Castlevania and Donkey Kong, and they've been wrong. But I feel like Donkey Kong Country 1 rather than 2 might make it, even though 2 is better. So let's say DKC 1.
DKC 1? Okay. You're predicting DKC 1 at number 7. Ash is predicting Super Mario World for number 7.
Oh, okay.
John, you are closer because it's Donkey Kong Country 2.
I shouldn't doubt myself. I keep doing this.
You really are. It's also funny that you keep like kind of mixing up the order because I think you predicted Donkey Kong Country 2 for 8. So you keep swapping them.
Yeah. I think this is a good place for DKC, though. There's a lot of really great games that I think should dominate the next half, but DKC 2 is still one of the best platformers on the system.
Oh, yeah.
Still one of the best of all time. It's weird, like retroactively, it's a Donkey Kong game where you don't play as Donkey Kong, it's just Diddy and Dixie. But I like that they mix things up and let other characters take the stage. Dixie Kong, this is her debut. She's one of the best characters in the entire series. Yeah, just what a delightful game. It took everything the first game did, but just got a lot more experimental and a lot more fun with it.
Yeah, these were the games, Donkey Kong Country and then Donkey Kong Country 2, that really made me want to get a Super Nintendo. Parents wouldn't allow it because I already had a Genesis. But I'd see that and I'd play a little bit. My cousin had the original Donkey Kong Country, so I was eventually able to play that, but he never got 2. I didn't experience 2 other than Donkey Kong Land 2, but I can tell you Dixie left an impression. Like that glide ability is so cool as a kid because it gives you so much more control. You feel more powerful with it. But Diddy Kong is great because he's sort of the speed run tactic. Once you know what you're doing, there you go, be Diddy, and you can just fly. But it also expanded what you have to collect, all the little bonus areas. There was a lot to do in these games, and the bonus areas were a little easier to find this time around. I wanted to say,
Yeah.
There are a lot of refinements to this one.
Yeah, they're all worth playing. But I feel like there's really no competition. Like the first game's great, 2 is outstanding, 3 is like it's still really good, but it's not quite at the same. But yeah, 2 just stands above all of them in a really high regard. And a lot of people do debate, like, is Donkey Kong Country better than Mario World? And that's probably not the case with this list, but I think there's a real conversation to be had there.
Yeah, I can see that conversation coming up because they do very different things.
Yeah. And yeah, David
And
Wise
I
did
like
go
the
sicko
distinctness.
mode with this soundtrack. He absolutely did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah. It is so good. Yeah, it's hard to fault this one. Donkey Kong Country 2 is fantastic. So I think it absolutely belongs in the top 10. It had 1,129 points,
Ooh.
putting it about 80 points ahead of Yoshi's Island. Well, closer to 70.
Okay.
But yeah, what got number 6?
For number 6, we are going to go with Final Fantasy VI.
See, Ash went Donkey Kong Country 2, so he's obviously wrong. But John, you said Final Fantasy 6? It is Final Fantasy VI.
I thought it might be. So there's a few RPGs which I think will be coming after this. FF6, one of the greats, but the few that might surpass it, I think rightfully surpass it. But this is absolutely one of the best.
So here's the shocking thing. I have still yet to play Final Fantasy VI. I played a little bit here and there. The farthest I ever got, I remember there was like a town that was like a lightning going through it, definitely before the World of Ruin. And you're going up there was a tower, and I for whatever reason I stopped at that point. I think I was borrowing it, and a friend wanted it back, and I just never got a chance to go back to it. It's sitting here, it's waiting for me over with the pixel remasters. I want to play it, but
the time will
never got a
come. The
chance.
time will come. We never say
I
never.
will make it a point.
There's always time. Everything that people love FF7 for is in FF6. They already did
Mm.
it. They already did it. With the PlayStation, they put more money into it, getting pre-rendered backgrounds, and obviously CD media let them do a lot more. But pretty much everything you love FF7 for is in 6. It's such a riveting story, lots of little twists in there. And I think at that time, RPGs were still kind of finding themselves, but this one broke conventions in many ways. It's not like just your usual Dungeons and Dragons stuff. They get a lot more whimsical. There's a lot more fantasy because it's Final Fantasy. They really
Mhm.
do just go places with this one, and it is rightfully one of the best, if not the best, in the series.
I mean, from the little bit I've played, I can tell you just how quality is. Like I still remember Ultros. I still remember the
Mm,
Ghost Train. I still
yeah.
remember the what happened with Cyan or Cian. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Cyan. It was cool, but just never got through the rest. Even though by cultural osmosis, I know the world ruin. I know
Mm,
of the opera scene. I made it a point to never watch the opera scene,
good,
so I don't.
good.
I've never experienced. I just know of it, and I know, of course, of the final boss and Kefka and all that.
Mm,
But I think it's still like I going through it would be educational and just interesting. Uh, my first RPG was Final Fantasy VII, so, but I still could go back to six and being like, oh,
yeah,
I
yeah.
get it.
Yeah, if you've played
Um,
7, then this is it'll feel like slipping into an old pair of gloves. It's just so good. And you're saying at the beginning, like people, if they've not played these games on this list, they should get around to that. And that time, it's never too late. If a game releases and you aren't around to play it, that's fine. Games are there forever. They're not disposable. There's always time.
mhm, yeah. Uh, Fun little trivia fact that I had from my Zeno retrospective: the design of the Magitech armor
Mm.
was supposed to look like what you see in the battle scenes, where it's a little bit more bulky. It has the claw
Yeah.
things. It doesn't like quite look the same as the opening cutscene. But I'm blanking on his name, and I apologize for that. The creator of Xenoblade, um, and did all those, redesigned it for the opening crawl, and that, yeah, Takahashi, thank you, Dad Alpha
Mm.
Lion, like sort of redesigned it, and they liked it. There was not enough time to change the sprite for it in battle, but outside of it, that's his design. So he knew
Super
his mechs.
interesting. Yeah.
So other crazy thing, Final Fantasy VI only beat out Donkey Kong Country 2 by 18 points.
So two people could have changed that.
Yeah, it was that close. There was a lot
Wow.
of shifting. Um, for a little bit until other votes came in. Final Fantasy VI was actually higher. That's how close it is
Mm.
to the next couple games. Because it's sitting at 1,147 points. But it's time for the top five. John, what is the fifth most best game? The fifth best game on the Super Nintendo according to the people of this poll.
We really are running out of choices because I have a lot in my mind. I'm like, which one would make it into the top 5? I might say Mario World.
Okay. Ash predicted Super Metroid.
I
At
don't.
number five is Earthbound.
I was thinking Earthbound too. I thought passionate Earthbound fans would put it at number 1. It wouldn't show up at number 5, but no, it's a fine place. Right
Mhm.
ahead of Final Fantasy 6. That's fine.
And just barely ahead of Final Fantasy VI, like 15 points.
Mm,
Like it, six, and Donkey Kong Country 2 were constantly swapping with each other.
mm.
But in the end, Earthbound won out.
Yeah, Earthbound is still so jolly. I played it for the first time when it came to Wii U, and it felt like nothing I'd played before at that point. It's a standard RPG. There's a lot of like Dragon Quest tropes in there, but
Mhm.
placing it in a modern setting just changes everything. It's just so odd and whimsical. The soundtrack is odd, but it's also got quality of life stuff that a lot of RPGs from even the modern day didn't really have. Like if you're gonna beat an enemy in battle, you just win. Like there's no need to do that battle. If you go to a shop and you buy something, they'll offer to let you equip that and then sell the last thing you were equipped with. Like it feels so ahead
Yeah.
of its time in that way.
There are, I've played a little bit. We were actually on that, game club together, and I
Right.
played as much as I could, and that's the farthest I've gotten is that where I think we meet Jeff,
Mm,
is the farthest I've ever gotten. Because yeah, I've still yet to beat it, but it is, like, it is on the list. I will be playing it, relatively soon, and actually, just last year, I played Earthbound Beginnings
nice.
and got
Okay.
to, see what that's all about and see how the evolution of it, and shouldn't have as much grinding as that. And it definitely can just tell from the differences between the entirety of Earthbound Beginnings and the beginning of Earthbound. It's like, yeah, there's definitely been some improvements here.
Yeah. You get one of the best soundtracks of all time as well. Like every single town theme is an absolute banger. Some of the battle themes are just kind of weird, but they stick in your mind because they're so weird. It's just this juxtaposition between everything. But I can hear like just a few notes, and I think I can just picture exactly where that track plays. It's just so iconic.
Yeah, I experienced all those songs through Smash Brothers, of course,
Hmm.
because I didn't know what NES was.
Who did like playing Smash Brothers 64 and Melee? So few people must have known who Ness was, but it made us want to
Mhm.
know though.
Yeah, I think when N64, when the Smash Brothers 64 came out, I had a friend who actually did track down a copy of
Whoa.
Earthbound. And I think he's very happy he did that
Sure.
because of how rare it is.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's it is a classic. It is, you know there's a reason people love this game. It may not be for everybody. I've definitely seen more than a few people who have not really clicked with Earthbound in a
mm,
way. It's a little too kooky for them. Maybe not the story isn't quite clicking for them in some ways, but um, I think it's still uh, I think it's still a testament. There's a reason it's sort of like gotten that reevaluation,
yeah,
and again, making it more available makes more people like it.
absolutely. It's a key ingredient that few seem to grasp.
Hmm. Who would have guessed? All right. Number 4, and let me tell you, there was a jump in differences between from 5 to 4 as far as, votes are concerned. Like, these 4 stood away from all the rest up to this point.
I'm fairly certain I know exactly which four they are. I have no idea what order they go in though. So I think, just personally speaking, out of the four games that are in my mind, Mario World, I'm going to say again, because I think as great as it is, I don't know if it's greater than the other ones that I am predicting.
Okay, so you're predicting Mario World for number 4.
Yes.
Ash predicted Final Fantasy 6, so again, he's wrong. Um, at number 4, with 1,690 points, 500 points beyond Earthbound, Chrono Trigger.
Whoa! I was thinking that would be number one. I was keeping hold
Mhm.
of that one in my back pocket. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a big surprise, and I wonder
It
if
it
it's
it was a huge
is it
surprise.
is it exactly what you were just talking about in regards to availability? Is it because people just haven't had a chance to play Chrono Trigger?
That might be the case. There was a time where it was just always on everybody's lips. Like,
Yeah.
they did like Chrono Trigger, best of all time. Chrono Trigger, best on the SNES. It would always be in that conversation. But Chrono Trigger hasn't been made easily readily available other than the PC version, which doesn't get talked about a lot, in quite some
Mm.
time.
And it had a bad
And
reputation for a long time, and that's stuck. But they've patched it, they've made it better, but I think
mhm,
people just it's been
they assume it's bad.
exactly, yeah.
And before that, the last version we got was on the DS.
Right, which is an
So, and
amazing version, but
yeah.
I don't think word of mouth was quite as strong then. It's definitely, I think, in the more peak internet years when social media was a thing, Chrono Trigger had a big resurgence just after the DS, I'd say.
Mhm.
And then it didn't have any console to be on though, so like it was just kind of it fell on
It,
dead ears.
I it's a shame that Square hasn't re-released this more. Like, it feels like, oh yeah, Chrono Trigger. It's like everybody knows that one, and obviously it still did extremely well. Top 4 in the SNES is nothing to sneeze at,
No, no, no.
whatsoever. But I introduced Amy to it not too long ago, and she fell in love. She really enjoyed the characters and the scenarios and what was happening. Like, it still affects you, and
Mm.
I mean, I can tell you the quality of Chrono Trigger right now because the first time I experienced it was with the PlayStation version,
Yeah.
which is widely considered to be the worst version, and
Mhm.
I still love that game.
Yeah. I mean,
um,
when you think of RPGs, you probably think of long length. You probably think of like doing fetch quests and just sort of meandering around. Chrono Trigger is just
mm,
constant wins. Like, this game doesn't really have fluff.
no,
Everything is fully justified, and it runs into a really nice playtime of around like 20 hours ish. But there's so many reasons to come back and replay as well. So many twists, so many things you can see in one playthrough that you can't do in another. It is just once you've played it, you can't stop thinking about it. That's the kind of game it is.
yeah, yeah, and there are side quests at the end and that really dive into the time travel aspect of the game, and it's just great. It's just a lot of
Mm,
great battle system, really memorable characters. Like at the time when I was hearing like Dream Team, I was like, oh yeah, Toriyama and Sakaguchi. Like I knew those two aspects. I didn't know Hori.
mm.
Having that element of Dragon Quest in there as well is like, holy crap, this really was a Dream Team. Like, how was this game seems impossible.
Yeah, yeah. Like, how did it come to be, and how have we not really had a follow? I know we've had Chrono Cross, but there's not really been a proper Chrono Trigger follow up.
Yeah. Cross is a little too different. It
Mm,
has some connection. I still love Cross,
yeah,
but yeah, it's fascinating in that way, and it's one of the greats. It
yeah.
is absolutely one of the greats and stands up to the test of time. but yeah, I think its legacy is getting just slightly lost because it
Mm.
hasn't been re-released.
Change that.
So
Like, that's so easy to change. Just put the PC
yeah,
version on Switch.
that's all you need to do. That's all they need to do, and it would be fine. But I don't know. I mean, I think it'd still be cool if Square went the extra mile and made a Dragon Quest 11-esque version of Chrono Trigger.
Mm.
So
I mean,
that
that
style
or
would be
HD2D,
gorgeous.
either
Yeah.
path you take, you can't lose.
Let's get to number 3. So we're into the top 3 here.
Yeah, it's an obvious three, I think, but the order is not. I keep saying Mario World, and I've been wrong every time, and I feel like that might actually be number one now. um, so I think I think if you asked people 10 years ago, they would have put Super Metroid at number one, and I think that game is still one of the finest achievements in the industry. But I think it might be number three, Super
So
Metroid.
you're saying Super Metroid at number 3.
Mhm.
Ash put Chrono Trigger at number 3, predicting that. So obviously Ash is just always
He
one
didn't predict
off, I
number
swear to
one though,
God.
which is surprising.
Yeah. I well, that's his favorite. I don't even
Yeah,
think he thought people would
yeah,
vote the same way. So that's interesting. But I do find it funny how he's just always one off
yeah.
for these. Number 3, with 1,781 points, only 90 points ahead of Chrono Trigger, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Oh, okay. So, so Super Metroid is probably the next one. Oh, A Link to the Past is again. It is so. It took so many steps forward from the first Zelda. The first Zelda was this barren world that you kind of just stumble around, and I love that about it. But A Link to the Past is so structured. You've got
Mhm.
actual people living there. You've got a town. You can really explore a more tangible world. And it's still so good today that they reuse that overworld repeatedly. Like we've had it in this game, A Link Between Worlds. We've just had it in Echoes of Wisdom. Clearly, there's not like they hit gold with this one, and they just keep doing it again, and people have no objection to it because it was so good when they did it the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good that it's the structure of A Link to the Past was literally the blueprint of God knows how many Zelda games after this
Yeah,
point.
absolutely. They didn't change until Breath of the Wild, really. Like going
Yeah.
3D, changing perspective that's a big thing. But the actual formula of, going around, like first you gotta get three little orbs that'll get you the Master Sword, and then you've got to do like four other things. That's been the formula of pretty much every Zelda before Breath of the Wild.
Mhm.
They changed the dungeon order maybe a bit, but yeah, that's the usual formula. And Links to the Past just solidified that. It solidified the gameplay. It made items really more integral. Like every dungeon was about finding an item, using that item to get the big key, and then taking down the boss with that item. Like that's
Mhm.
the Zelda formula.
I mean, it's so much more interesting than the original Zelda when you look at dungeons. Like
Mm,
you're sort of stumbling around, like trying blocks to push and stuff like that. And there's still elements of that in the Link to the Past, but then you have like, oh, there's I need to get across there, and I haven't found the item for it. Oh, I just found this hook shot. Now I can get across to
yeah,
that area and do this thing, and that item might help out taking out this boss. Like I can use the hook shot to pull little slime guys out and slash at them now. It's you got upgrades to find. There's just so much to explore
yeah,
within Hyrule in A Link to the Past, and uh, it, it's amazing how much of an upgrade that is over the original Zelda and Zelda 2. They sort of melded the two ideas together because you actually had towns in Zelda 2, and to, to go that step further, have more of a plot. Um, it was it sucked you in. I came to this game very late, still highly enjoyed it.
I think what makes A Link to the Past quite distinct today is it has elements of bullet hell in there every now and then. Like there are some boss fights which just have orbs just flying everywhere, and it does feel like a shmup at times. Like the actual combat itself is pretty in depth. And Link he gets knocked around like a pinball, so you've got to be really precise with how you move around. But I can't think of any other Zelda that is quite like this in terms of combat. It's real. There's so many things just flying everywhere, and
Hmm.
it's so distinct.
Yeah, that's very true. And I mean, you talk about pinball, I immediately thought of Moldorm. And
Oh,
they're
yeah,
like, oh, we're gonna use that against you.
yeah.
Knock down and do it again. But yeah, it's a classic that you can come back to. Again, Amy played it for the first time not too long ago.
Mm,
Loved it. Just completely absorbed into it. Still she fortunately played on NSO she could rewind if she died because she
yeah.
hates the idea of having to restart at the beginning of the dungeon if she dies. So it's a little little bit of a problem to deal with, but it's a stone cold classic. It is again, it is the blueprint of Zelda for the next decade plus.
Mhm.
Let's get to number 2.
So I feel like Mario World has it at number one. So I'm gonna say that this is Super Metroid then.
All right. Ash predicted Yoshi's Island. He had a lot of faith in Yoshi's Island. At number 2, Super Mario World.
Whoa, 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 whoa! They have the same. They have the same sounds at the beginning.
I right? Yeah, you were like, "Ah, nope." It
Yeah,
is Super Mario World.
crazy.
John, I swear to God, counting this thing was a roller coaster
Yeah.
because, it was Zelda and Chrono Trigger back and forth, and the game that got number 1.
Mhm.
Um, and then the game that got number 1 started just pulling away,
Yeah.
more and more. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing Mario World, Mario World, Mario World, Mario World, and Zelda kept popping up, but always lower. So eventually, like there was a point where Chrono Trigger and Link to the Past was like 150, 200 points above Mario World. It
Whoa.
ended up with Mario World being a good 80 points ahead of Link to the Past. It just got that many votes as people came in.
Wow.
It
Like
was a
Mario
hell of a
World,
shift.
it is a stone cold classic. It deserves the recognition. But I wasn't sure where to expect this because Super Nintendo is just full of so many great games that
Mm,
I feel like in my personal perspective, I think some eclipse Mario World. But when you look at it, though, it is still one of the best 2D Mario's, perhaps the best one. It's that sense of adventure again. Like levels
mhm.
feel more than just platforming playgrounds. You can actually explore them, find hidden keys, find hidden paths. It's like everything is a little box that you can slowly unlock and unravel. It's so different to anything else, and it still is today. That there's so little that tries to be like Mario World. I remember with Mario U, they're like, "We've gone back to the Mario World map." And I'm like, "No, you haven't. Like, you've let us choose where we
In
want to
name
go. But this
only.
isn't the Mario World map."
There were secrets to find there,
Yeah,
alternate exits that led you to different levels and different paths that you could see on the map and try to figure out how to get there, and, find those switch palaces that
yeah,
allow access to other things. It's the exploration aspect of Mario World was unbelievable, and it's just so much content. You have all these different worlds. You just gorgeous style, this impeccable control, and then even beyond Bowser, here's 8 super challenging levels. Like there just kept being more and more and more. And let me tell you, as a kid, Yoshi was the coolest friggin' thing in the world. I saw
Yeah.
Yoshi, I'm like, oh my gosh, that thing's amazing.
Mm. Even the setting was really different. We hadn't really hit that Mushroom Kingdom fatigue because we only had Mario 1 and then Doki Doki Panic, then 3. And 1 and 3 feel really different, but they went to like a dinosaur aesthetic this time. They're like dinosaur enemies. You got Yoshi. It just felt so different. And even today, like you don't really go to these kind of locations in Mario still. And yeah,
Mm,
it's just super unique. They have a lot of exploration, but you can ignore most of it. But then you get to, like the Forest of Illusion, where you have to engage. Like the point of those levels is to engage, and that might spike your curiosity to explore other levels to find those secrets. It's just ingenious.
yeah.
It's such a clever game.
I the way they expanded on some elements too, like boos were introduced in Super Mario Brothers
Yeah,
3, but we got our first boo mansions
yeah.
in Mario World that were always puzzles and having to figure out how to get out of there and find the alternate exits and things like that. That was always fascinating. The amount of ghosts they would have on the screen at the same time. Mario World was a launch title, but it is super impressive. It really was a showcase of the system. I remember going to a mall kiosk and playing the first couple levels, um, and freaking out the first time the bonsai bill was shot at you.
Mm.
Like, what is that? Why is it so big? Freaking out. Then you had I thought the little dinosaur guys that their necks collapsed in became faster were always cool.
Mm.
The introduction of charging chucks, which were a nightmare to deal with as a kid. There are so many memorable elements to this that it's not surprising that this got so high up because it is just it's so imaginative,
Yeah,
and I think that's really where it shines.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, in my personal list, this probably would have been a bit higher up. But the more we talk about it, the more it's understandable. Like this is the cornerstone. This is the Super Nintendo game people think of. It's the cornerstone title.
Yeah, for sure. I even left it personally off my list because I wanted to highlight other games that I knew would like I wanted to give them some love
Yeah.
that they could. These games are good. Dang it. Um, did not help out. I One of the games I put in here because I legit do enjoy it. Super Ghouls and Ghosts. That poor
Mm.
thing got maybe 3 other votes. So
Oh, that's
I'm
surprising.
I know, right?
Oh,
It feels wrong, but
yeah.
oh
Well,
well.
we started this video and I was saying like Super Metroid, people's perspective has changed on it. It used to be number one all the time, and now it's not really anymore. Either I'm going to be shown up and this is going to be a completely different game, or it is actually number one, even all these years on.
All these years on, it is Super Metroid.
And it deserves it. It
Yeah.
absolutely does. The only thing that I thought might change people's perspective is that Metroid has gotten tighter. Super
Mhm.
Metroid is a very floaty game. However, it's also still pretty much the perfect Metroid. In
Yeah.
terms of the bosses, particularly, Metroid has never been as good as this. Every area just feels like it has this ultimate culmination with some of the best bosses in video games. There's so many distinct areas, just constantly moving on to something completely different, upgrading Samus, like being able to walk around in water. It is such a huge upgrade over Metroid 1 and 2. Unfathomably so.
Yeah, massively so.
Yeah.
It is just the sheer fact that you have a map, the presentation, they really sold these sense of isolation
Mm.
this time around, the sense of scale. And I like how they mess with you because, nowadays we know Kraid to be a big boy, but they trick you into having like, oh, here's Kraid and he's the same mini guy that he was on
Yeah.
the NES version, and you take him out, no issue. And then like, no, here's Kraid. Like
Mm.
there are stuff that you miss nowadays because you didn't play the originals, or you start with Super Metroid that you didn't realize this time, or of course that first time you confront Ridley, like, oh, something stolen the Metroid, it's just hanging there. Instead of a squat little guy that Ridley was on the NES, now he's
It's
huge.
fearsome. Yeah. What Super Metroid excels at too is just silent storytelling.
Mm,
Metroid 2 kind of started this with the baby hatchling at the end. But in this game, so much is going on in the background, and if you're paying attention, you can really piece together a really interesting story. but the climax in particular, no words are said. It's just done through action, and it's still one of the most powerful video game endings ever.
Yeah, you get it, and I in looking at the other Metroid games, I love how they really play with expectations with this
Mm,
one. And like you fight Mother Brain again. It's yep, that's Mother Brain, same sort of fight. And then here comes phase two. It's like, oh,
yeah.
that's new, that's different. And yeah, it's one of those things where with time the controls don't feel as tight. I think for a long time people were not open to the idea of Super Metroid ever being remade.
Mm,
I think after Dread, people are becoming a little bit more open to it, and getting that sense. But yeah, once Super Metroid took off from Link to the Past, nothing could catch it, not even Mario
whoa.
World, because Mario World was at 1,845 points. Super Metroid 2,101.
Jeez.
Like everybody had Super Metroid somewhere on their list.
Yeah. And this right here is a contender not only for best Super Nintendo game, but just outright best video game.
Yeah. And I think it'll have a strong showing once we get to the overall, like once we actually have all the games top
Hmm.
tens from all these different systems, I think it'll still be a pretty top contender.
Yeah.
Like because I think the thing I realized with counting up this list is that it's kind of like a universal game in a lot of ways because I'd see mostly platformers and here's Metroid. I'd see more variety. Here's Super Metroid. I see everybody having like, oh, here's all these Japanese imports and here's Super Metroid.
Mm,
Like no matter the list, Super Metroid was kind of there.
yeah. If you've never played this game, like you seriously got to pause this video and do that. It's not too long, but it crams everything into it's a fantastic runtime. You can get lost at times, but that's part of the joy. It's about finding your
Mhm.
way. And there's lots of like hidden abilities that you never need to use because you can change up Samus's beams and like you can make it so like you go into a morph ball and drop like 7 bombs. Like, there's so many different like just fun combat things you never need to use, but they're in there.
And replayable because of all the speed running. Like
Yeah.
this is the birth of speed running with this game.
Mm. Yeah, the
Uh,
wall jump in future Metroids they made it much easier, but here
mhm.
it's definitely complicated, but once you nail it, you can sequence break like crazy.
Yeah, it's it's impressive. I've never pulled it off myself, but I had a friend who's like who showed me the end where like he did the best time
Mm.
and got showed Samus in just her prior zero suit before it was a blue jumpsuit. So yeah, it was it's so influential and still holds up. Like friend of the channel, Rebecca Valentine.
Mm.
Um, she just went through Super Metroid the first time herself. I saw
Oh,
her
amazing.
posting about it on Bluesky, and like you'd have little comments about like here or there about certain things. Uh, like like a she made a joke of like when does Metroid fly, and not knowing that yeah she does do that at
Metroid
some
does
point.
fly. Yeah.
Samus flies at some point. Um, and then of course beating it, she's like, okay, yeah, I get it.
Mm.
That's all you have to say is like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Super Metroid is like the most influential and possibly still the best. It's debatable. But from here
Mhm.
on, any console that has Metroid will probably hit top 10 because it
Yeah.
was just from here
I mean,
on, they
already
nailed it.
was.
Yeah.
So far, it is the most consistent series with
Huh.
Metroid 1,
Oh,
2,
that's
and
right.
3 all being in the top 10.
That's right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think we're not going to break that streak until GameCube. I don't know if
Metroid Prime will absolutely make it on
Prime
GameCube.
1 will be there.
Yeah.
Prime 2,
Don't know about
I
Prime
don't
2.
know.
Yeah.
I
Even
don't
even
think
on
Prime 2 will
Wii,
make it.
like Prime 3 I think might make it. If we count Prime Trilogy, absolutely it will make it.
Yeah. Oh, the Prime Trilogy is going to make that really
Yeah.
tough.
It will. Yeah.
I don't I
Maybe it
don't know how
shouldn't
I'm
count.
going to count
Maybe
that
it's just
one.
like Prime 3 or nothing. Or other M,
Yeah.
if you want to vote for
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah. That's for sure. Um but yeah, there is our top 10 list. It is a fantastic list. Obviously, a lot of ones in there that people would expect, but that's why I kind of branched out here to get other games. Like I have a top 50 here because there's some really interesting placements
Mm.
and some really excellent games here. So just barely not making the list. We missed it by about 120 points. Number 11 was Donkey Kong Country. It
Mhm.
we almost had to do 2 DKs on the list, but did not quite make
I'm
it. Honestly, I'm
glad
okay
we
with that
didn't.
because
Yeah,
I like the variety. I
same.
like the fact that we have a lot of variety here.
Yeah, and the better
Uh,
one ranked higher. Like one's iconic,
mhm,
one's good, but two deserved it.
yeah. Number 12 was Super Mario RPG, only
Mhm.
30 points behind Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah,
I think it got a nice resurgence thanks to
the
the
remake.
Switch version.
Yeah,
Number 13, I pulled for it, didn't quite make it. Super Castlevania 4,
I thought it might
but it
make
was
it. I didn't
close.
think Contra 3 would quite make it, but Super Castlevania 4 seemed like a decent top 10 pick.
Yeah. Number 14, Donkey Kong Country 3. There's been a resurgence of love for DKC
Mm,
3. I think it's
okay,
been reevaluated a little
if
bit.
people say so.
Number 15 was Tetris Attack / Panel to Pawn. I just they're the
Nice.
same game,
That
but
should
yeah,
be no,
number
that
15.
should be in the top 10, but we accept it. We accept it.
Yeah, you know what? Top 15 is pretty dang good for Tetris Attack and
Yeah.
Panel to Pawn. That's a strong showing. Number 16 was Super Mario All Stars.
Okay.
Get the
Yeah.
compilation, which
I've
that's
never
fair.
liked Mario
Yeah.
1 in that compilation. I've always felt it was
Mm,
weird. You hit blocks and you keep going. It doesn't like you don't bump off them. It's odd.
yeah. Uh, it's definitely the way to play Lost Levels though. Like
Yes, yeah.
that's a far easier version.
And Mario 3 and 2 because that's what the GBA versions are based off. They're really good.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Number 17, F-Zero.
Cool.
Which again might have been a bit of a resurgence there. Almost beat Mario All Stars. It was only 7 points behind.
Mm.
Um, Number 18, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time,
Yep, that's a decent place for
which
that.
just classic beat 'em up.
Yeah.
Number 19 was Secret of Mana.
Ooh. Thinking
So,
about it a bit more, the first F-Zero, like, it did a lot for its time. It's like a 3D racer. It was like the ultimate launch title. I
mhm,
think Secret of Mana should be ahead of F-Zero, though.
that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, how often do you see a 3-player RPG?
Yeah, it's so unique. Yeah.
Mhm. Number 20. This one surprised me. I shocked that it got this much of a push. Final Fantasy 5.
5. Okay.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 5.
Interesting.
Only 2 points behind Secret of Mana, and crazy enough, only 2 points ahead of number 21, Final Fantasy 4.
I thought 4 would be, like, way ahead of 5 in people's
I did too,
opinions.
and for a
Yeah.
while it was, but there was a resurgence of 5. People loving that job system.
Cool. Alright. Yeah, you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 22 was Super Mario Kart.
Okay.
Age, but
Yeah.
it's still, a classic. Only a single point ahead of number 23, Street Fighter 2.
That's
And I just rolled all versions
surprising.
of Street Fighter 2 because there's so many. Like, I just have it as Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper
Mm.
Fighting. Like, there's so many different versions.
It's obviously a popularity thing, but, like, Street Fighter 2 is better than Mario Kart.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. It really is. But um, you know, it's Mario Kart versus a fighting game,
Yeah.
but Street Fighter 2 is the better one. It's just the way it is. uh, Number 24, only 6 points behind Street Fighter, Star Fox.
Cool. Alright.
So put in a pretty
Yeah.
solid showing. Number 25, Kirby's Dream Course.
That's a fun one. Yeah.
So yeah, that's just I think people will discover the multiplayer of that one and
Mm.
just be like, yeah, that's good. 26 was Kirby's Dream Land 3. Only
Oh.
3 points behind Dream Course.
Yeah, I
So
guess I can see that. Yeah.
mhm. Obviously, I think this deserves to be in the top 10. It is that good of a game. I haven't played it personally, but number 27, Dragon Quest 5.
Yep.
But again, it's the Super Nintendo version. How many people have played that? Nobody, because they didn't localize it. Though what
Right.
that was, I feel like if they had localized 5, Dragon Quest would be in a much better position in the States than it
If
was.
they localize 5, this would be like top 3 material. Like, it's arguably better than Chrono Trigger, and I think when the DS comes around, we'll probably see a few of these turn their heads again.
Mhm.
Dragon Quest V absolutely deserves it on DS.
Yeah. I I'm looking forward to eventually playing that one. It is I'm working my way up through the series, so oh goodness. But just beat it beats the next game, number 28, by 3 points. Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, which is
Daniel and
extremely
his
impressive
alt
considering
accounts striking again.
considering it never got localized. That's super impressive.
Yeah, that is really impressive. Yeah, there's a
Uh,
few Super Nintendo games that if they were released globally would have done really well. Terranigma's another one of them.
mhm. Absolutely. Tied at number 29, so it's 2930. But tied together, Super Punch Out and Live Alive.
I was wondering where Live Alive would turn up.
Yeah,
Super Punch Out's a weird one. I love the NES one so much. I like the Super Nintendo one, but I don't come back to it for some reason.
I've never really played the Super Punch Out,
Hmm.
so
It's good, but like it's not. It's just I don't know. The first one just feels so homely, and this one like is there's an odd feeling to it.
mhm. I can feel that. I think it's because it goes a little bit more like the arcade.
Yeah.
Little Mac looks a little different, that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, number 31, Mario's Super Picross.
That's a good pick. That is a good
Yeah,
pick.
I've played that. The only issue I have with it is like it's not like you have Mario there, but it's all like basic stuff you're doing Picross of. It's not Mario themed at all.
It's just introducing people to Picross.
Yeah,
You
pretty
gotta
much.
reel them in with Mario.
Yeah. Number 32, the last game to get over 100 points, Terranigma.
I'm glad it made it. Terranigma
Yep.
is wonderful. We didn't have Illusion of Gaia in there. Terranigma is better than Illusion of Gaia. I know Ash loves
Mhm.
that game. It is better, and I don't know if Ash has played Terranigma, but if he did, he would fall down. That's how good it is.
Probably, probably. At number 33, Mega Man X2,
Okay.
which is just a solid sequel. It's
Yeah.
like yeah, it's
No
good.
Contra 3. Yeah, where's Contra 3?
We're getting there.
Okay.
34, Mega Man 7.
All right.
Much maligned, but honestly really good.
Yeah.
I think it holds up way better than people think. Um, Number 35, Fire Emblem Thracia 776. Again, good showing for a game that never got
Yeah.
localized.
Yeah. Fire Emblem fans are fighting well for their Japan only games.
Yeah. Uh, Number 36, Mario Paint.
Cool.
That was just loved.
Mm,
That's all it comes down to.
yeah.
37 was Trials of Mana, which again, bumped from
Yeah.
the
I mean,
re-releases.
you can
So
play
it's
that now. Like you can play the original version in English. That counts.
yeah, I think that does the trick.
Yeah.
Number 38, Star Fox 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Star Fox 2 is crazy ambitious.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a shame it never got actually released back in the day because I
Yeah.
really think it would have changed some things. But no, it's still they have that got to re-release, and hey, people are actually able to play it legit and
Yeah.
they enjoy it.
Its mechanics found their way into like Command used a lot of Star Fox 2. Zero uses a
Mhm.
lot of Star Fox 2. Like it is a pretty influential game on Star Fox.
Yeah. Number 39, I did not know what to do with this game, and I just sort of left it as its own category.
Mm.
Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World,
I mean,
which
it's its own skew. I guess it counts.
I was like, do I combine it with anything?
Yeah.
It's sort of the issue I'm gonna have with Metroid Prime 3 and Metroid Prime Trilogy.
Hmm.
What do you do with those?
I
And so
think
I just kept it.
we've got to make a statement saying that Prime 3 is Wii's Metroid and Trilogy is a
I
compilation.
yeah, I'm gonna just put it out there that Metroid Prime Trilogy will not count.
Mm.
Um, I did not realize it was only released in North America and Europe. But it's a great deal. It's a fantastic deal. But I was fortunate enough that it's like, okay, adding the points to this would not change standings. Like if I put the points that this compilation got towards Mario World, it would not put it above Super Metroid. So I'm
Mhm.
like, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Number 40 was Sim City.
Okay, cool. I want
Never
Nintendo to do SimCity again. It's so rad that they did that internally, and
Yeah.
there's a legacy went on to like Link's Awakening. The soundtrack is great. It's a cool version.
Hmm. Absolutely. Let's see. Number 41. Here's your Contra 3.
No way. Contra 3 at 41. I do not accept that. People need to revote. We'll do this again.
They, yeah, I think they got scared off by the difficulty, I think is what it comes down to. It just has too much of a reputation now. It's a shame. Number 42. I'll rapid fire the rest of these. 42 was ActRaiser. 43 was Harvest Moon.
Mm-hmm.
44, Lufia 2. 45, here's Ash's Illusion of Gaia. 46, Demon's Crest, which again, I think I feel like that should be a little bit higher, but that's is again personal opinions. 47, Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem. 48, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. 49, Wild Guns, which is one of my favorite underrated titles. I think that's just a lot of fun. And then tied at number 50, Pilot Wings and Killer Instinct.
Oh, very different games.
Yes. I feel like there's a reason I've put in an arcade section. I might even like subdivide it to like 80s arcade and 90s arcade
Yeah.
too, because I feel like if the ultimate list does not have Street Fighter on here, we're messing up here.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
that absolutely should be considered.
For sure. Yeah. But all in all, I think the top 10 is really solid. I question you viewers for putting Contra 3, or was it 41?
41, yeah.
No, you're on something. But they otherwise, I think this is a really good representation of the Super Nintendo. There's 50 great games that you should play here. And the thing about the system is there's even more. There's even more games beyond this. Yeah.
I'm looking at, we got just going down and just picking out some ones. Again, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, I think is great. We've got, Dragon Quest 4 and 6, really good. Gradius, Super R-Type, Pocky and Rocky is a lot of fun. Ogre Battle and Tactics Ogre, really great games. Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse, that's actually a lot of fun. Legend of the Mystical Ninja, shame that didn't do better. Got your Final Fights. So some people remember that Shin Megami Tensei came out on this system. It had 4 different games. They all got some votes. One person even voted for Famicom Detective Club, Girl Who Stands Behind.
Was that was that cartridge or was that on Satellaview?
I don't know, but I mean Satellaview games. Somebody voted for BS Legend of Zelda, so Satellaview counts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all in all a good ranking. People did well. I'm not too mad about Contra 3, just a little bit mad.
Fair. Contra's unfortunately just going to struggle, and unfortunately, we've gotten a bit past its heyday. So I don't know if Contra will ever make the top 10 again.
Probably not. But I'm excited for the future, though. There's a lot of consoles coming up, which are going to be huge, heated debates. And I'm scared.
It's going to be a little bit till we get to those, because our next system is something that's not going to have debates. And honestly, we're going to have, I feel like we're going to have some repeats here. The Game Gear.
A lot of Master System repeats, absolutely. But some exclusives, though.
There are some exclusives. So I'm curious how that one's going to play out. I had a Game Gear, but I didn't have a lot of games for the Game Gear. I kind of stuck with the Game Boy.
Right.
So you can look forward to that next week. And this has been the top 10 games for the Super Nintendo. Honestly, pretty solid. Solid.
Well done. Give yourselves a pat on the back, everyone.
Absolutely. And complain about how your underground favorite did not make it into the top 10 or even top 20.
I remember, you can change this. There were a few of those games there which were like 1 or 2 people away from changing their outcome, and you can change that.
Donkey Kong Country 2 could have easily been the number 5 game instead of the number 7. Like 2 people could have changed that.
Yeah.
So that's why the votes count. So keep an eye out for those posts that are going up. And if my Bluesky, I do those around every Monday or Tuesday. So just keep an eye out for that if you want to take part in these, because we have a lot of systems left to go. So keep that in mind. And otherwise, Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting us over on Patreon at patreon.com/gvgaming. But even just subscribing to the channel and ringing that bell helps us a ton. So until next time, bye.
Bye.